I could help you with this one, if you let me out of here.
A show that was rating well in its first 2 seasons, but still had much of its fan base waiting for it to, get good.
I respect that.
I mean, it's much like my boss waiting for me to be able to flip a burger that doesn't stick to the kitchen ceiling.
This will take some time.
In its 3rd year, unlike my burgers, Star Trek seemed to find its groove with Star Trek The Next Generation Season 3.
Engage. Let's make sure that history never forgets the name. Enterprise.
In this video, we'll be looking at the episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation's 3rd season from 1989. It's arguably the point where The Next Generation turned a corner. There will of course be more spoilers than a late-night street racing meetup.
But the results will take several days.
New head writer Michael Piller would come on board, sorting out the behind-the-scenes disaster that was the writing staff. Well, eventually.
We will find some way to undo the damage we've caused.
And under his watch, things would generally change for the better. One of his new policies would be that stories would have to be about somebody, or from their point of view.
That's better.
You'll also start to see tiny bits of continuity popping up with references to previous episodes. It's all done relatively subtly, but it's something that does pop out more on a rewatch. Season 3 was where Star Trek The Next Generation became consistently solid, and then consistently good, and then even excellent on occasion. And then there was that damn cliffhanger at the end of the year.
Perhaps the ratings were correct.
Season 3 would bring to the writing room the talents of Ronald D. Moore, and also writers like Ira Stephen Bear, who would stay on for 1 season, but would later return to the world of Star Trek, where he would shepherd Deep Space Nine.
This is a hell of a time.
Another big change is just how much Picard is now involved with the action, which of course will lead to Riker being just there to register a twitching stink eye at the end of an act. Whereas Riker had been the focus of so many episodes in the first 2 seasons,
Is there any reason it shouldn't be?
this year Patrick Stewart would lay down the law as to his wishes for Picard's character. More action and more action.
All I require is to sit in the sun, read my book, alone.
Everyone would get their moment in the sun, but there would also be an increasing focus on Data and to a lesser extent Worf. Star Trek used to receive dozens of unsolicited spec scripts from various writers and aspiring writers, but during the 3rd season, Michael Piller decided to go through the pile of submissions, and he would launch a program whereby anybody could submit directly to Star Trek. Whereas before an aspiring writer would need an agent or a lawyer to submit the script for them, now anybody with a finished script and a signed waiver could send in their dream script where Riker's beard attained sentience and tried to take over the ship.
Perhaps that was an error in judgment.
Evolution is a fairly ordinary episode about Wesley's science experiment with microscopic nanomachines turning sentient. It's a Wesley episode, however you look at it, with all the baggage that might entail. Wesley now has to get used to his mother returning to the ship. Beverly also has to get used to the fact that Wesley doesn't really need her as much. Wesley talks with a kindred spirit of an older scientist who was also once a boy genius and is now horrified at the idea of having peaked so early. Then Wesley's experiment with the nanomachines goes wrong and will threaten the Enterprise.
I think I've made a horrible mistake.
And also, he's not the one to save the ship. Beverly is annoyed that her son seems so serious, and he's not some 17-year-old hellraiser, off hooning around performing dangerous maneuvers in a ship. She does, however, seem far less concerned about him having endangered the ship once more.
Now that is healthy for a boy his age.
Gates McFadden had been let go after the 1st season, with Crusher replaced by Dr. Pulaski. And then after a change in head writer, McFadden was contacted by Patrick Stewart to see if she was interested in returning to the show. McFadden quickly noted how her character was not quite the same person as in the 1st season. That will they won't they with Picard was definitely won't they. Beverly is now less strident, a little younger, and much less of a helicopter parent. She also seems to have taken some courses at Starfleet Medical, as she's no longer the Angel of Death as she was in the 1st season. For example, if you were an ensign who'd been horribly injured on an away mission and you woke up in sickbay and then you saw Dr. Crusher smiling at you, you'd be far less likely to run screaming from sickbay.
I'm sorry.
Oops, spoke too soon. Probably just a one-off.
The Romulan has died.
Hush you. This is Michael Piller's first credited script, but it was originally something he submitted as an outside freelancer for the show's new head writer, Michael Wagner. Wagner left after a few weeks, and Piller was offered the gig of co-executive producer. Evolution is also a very soft reboot of The Next Generation. Everything feels a lot more confident. The regular cast seems settled and comfortable in a way that wasn't always apparent in the first 2 seasons, and that's not just the uniforms. There's a slightly updated version of the opening titles, there's different lighting with the new director of photography in Marvin Rush. The male crew now get the redesigned jackets instead of the intensely uncomfortable one-piece spandex suits that were still worn by lower ranks. Even so, the new uniforms would be tweaked after a few episodes. The jackets would give us a more defined version of the Picard maneuver, where Patrick Stewart pulled down on his jacket's waistband after it had ridden up. It doesn't matter how bad the situation is, Picard's always aware that the main view screen adds 4.543 kilograms.
Remove the humans.
An Earth colony on the wrong planet needs to be removed as it violates a treaty with the Sheliak, a race of creatures who are very precise. In other words, they ain't taking no shit from the Federation. The colony is on a planet where, of course, the radiation is lethal to the crew and prevents the use of the transporter, so Data has to go down and prepare the colonists for evacuation while Picard tries to find a way to gain time.
He died in a rock slide surveying the route for this aqueduct.
Data finds the planet's leader is hostile to the idea of leaving the planet while the android's sales pitch is falling on deaf ears. This is presented as if Lieutenant Commander Data, third in command, has never been in command of any sort of mission. I mean, it's there in the name when everybody calls him Commander Data. Except of course for Data's nemesis, the ship's pedant, Lieutenant Fark, who constantly corrects anybody who refers to Commander Data by insisting it's Lieutenant Commander Data.
Perhaps this is a situation where excessive honesty can be detrimental.
Data even has, well, it's not really a romance per se, but there's definitely some warm and fuzzies. Well, Data can't really feel anything warm and fuzzy, save perhaps for a radioactive caterpillar crawling up his leg.
Do you have any feelings for me?
I have no feelings of any kind.
Data has been reset slightly, making him even more childlike in anything to do with relationships and emotions.
Why did you do that?
You appeared to need it.
At this point, having a relationship with Data is like trying to get a refund from a customer service chatbot.
I lack soul.
In Survivors, a sweet old couple are somehow the only survivors of a planet devastated by a war with an alien race. There is absolutely no reason for them to have survived, and whenever Picard tries to get answers, a super powerful spaceship appears in orbit. Troy's also having difficulties with a tune on constant repeat in her head. Look, we've all been there, trying to binge 10 seasons of Friends without having to do the clap every 22 minutes.
Good tea. Nice house.
Survivors is a smaller episode, and a well-acted one, but Picard is the only one who seems to be attempting to work out what was going wrong, with everybody else just reacting to him. It's not amazing, but like a bottle of water left in the freezer, it's quite solid.
Is the love of a woman worth the destruction of an entire species?
Riker starts to settle into his new role, where he doesn't actually have to do all that much, so Patrick Stewart can come and do some damn fine acting. Yet, if you want someone to hang upside down, Riker's your man. I mean, you could still hang Patrick Stewart upside down if you want, and it wouldn't bug the show's hairdressers half as much.
I believe I have seen the Picard.
Who Watches the Watchers is a Prime Directive episode, and just how much do we love Prime Directive episodes?
Prime Directive.
Prime Directive. Prime Directive
Has already been violated.
The Enterprise crew is on their way to install a new reactor at a hidden installation used by anthropologists to observe a proto-Vulcan civilization. Proto-Vulcans is a way to make them Vulcan, but not Vulcans. They're a rational people, but one that's at a relatively primitive level in terms of their technological development. Of course, something goes wrong, and the installation is revealed to one of the locals, who goes slightly mad, thinking Picard is God. I mean, he's only proto-Vulcan.
I'm not saying that all the old beliefs are true, but I did see the Picard.
It's a nice touch that it's actually a rational, developing society that, out of ignorance, turns back to the ideas of human sacrifice. Far-fetched? Or is it? No, it's far-fetched. Or is it?
And he will grant us favors in return.
Troy and Riker get the surgical treatment for the first time in The Next Generation, except things go wrong and it's up to Picard to save the day. Liko wants to sacrifice Troy so that maybe the godlike Picard will bring back his dead wife, but he never seems that concerned about bringing back his dead daughter. Ray Wise was about to get his moment in the drizzle in Twin Peaks. His daughter was played by actor and voice artist Pamela Adlon, And Catherine Lee Scott was a regular on the late 60s gothic horror soap opera Dark Shadows. But as Sally Decker, she'll instead be spending time up at Statesville Prison along with Martin, Dutch Gunderson and Lana.
The bonding.
I know of that.
In The Bonding, a crew member is killed on an away mission, and it turns out to be the mother of a boy with a very punchable face.
I can't get his face out of my mind.
Troy and Picard have to hold themselves back from punching the face of the boy they are meant to be comforting. Picard even leaves notes for himself as a reminder. The boy doesn't seem to want to grieve, and then lo and behold, his dead mother appears. But it's aliens who feel guilty about the death of the mother. The crew talk to each other about loss and the many opportunities for sudden death offered by Starfleet. They don't, however, talk about the opportunities for promotion. Then everybody spends the rest of the episode trying to convince the kid with the punchable face that he needs to cry. And cry because of his dead mother, and not because some middle-aged bald man wants to punch him in the face.
Perhaps it will be helpful to both of them.
The Bonding was Ronald D. Moore's first script sale to Star Trek, and on the strength of The Bonding he'd be invited back to pitch more ideas before becoming a staff writer, where he'd become one of the more prolific writers on the series throughout the rest of TNG and DS9 and write several Trek movies before later developing or creating his own series, Battlestar Galactica, Outlander and For All Mankind.
But it's not real. Isn't it?
History, though, does not record whether Ron Moore visited the set to punch the kid in the face.
I did, sir.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien.
Booby Trap sees the ship caught in an ancient minefield, and Geordi needs to solve some technical problem to get them free. To do that, he creates a holographic model of the Enterprise engine and decides to use a computer model of the engine before Geordi started customizing it. The Enterprise computer decides to create a hologram avatar of one of the engine's lead designers, Dr. Leah Brahms. The story starts off with Geordi failing on a date before meeting the computer avatar Dr. Brahms, who he quickly falls for. Geordi gets the ship to extrapolate this with that and create a lifelike engine designer, which is basically not all that far off how deepfakes and AI chat programs operate, just without some douchebag going on about how AI will change the world by making him rich.
Very good.
I know my ship.
As for the ethics of creating an avatar of a living person, well, Star Trek will take a weird approach to basically ignoring any concerns, unless they can either make a joke out of it or a commercial break cliffhanger.
Every time you touch it, it's me.
Oh, and of course, when somebody needs to pilot the Enterprise through the minefield, it's Picard who has the golden fingers.
I beg you.
In The Enemy, Geordi is injured and trapped on a planet with a Romulan from a crashed ship. The two are antagonistic towards each other but have to work together in order to get a beacon working to let the Enterprise know where they are, despite the intense atmospheric interference. Meanwhile, Picard has to deal with the Romulan warbird insisting on recovering the crew of the crashed ship. It's Tomalak, played by future Babylon 5-star Andreas Katsoulis, who, despite only a few appearances in the show, is still one of the more memorable Romulan antagonists.
I cannot surrender to the Federation.
Then stay here and die.
More surprising is that this is when the show was still trying to service all of its characters. It's a Geordi show, and one that came directly after another Geordi show. And Worf gets to be mean to an injured Romulan, and Picard shows why he is the one in command.
I would like a real chocolate sundae.
The negotiations over the management rights to a stable wormhole leads Troy to hook up with one of the negotiators, Devanoni Ral. So Troy has a fling, but this time she's awake and even gets to know his name first. Of course, as would happen a fair bit, when the crew hooked up with somebody, they would often turn out to be not quite what they at first seemed. Unless, of course, they at first seemed to be a complete douchebag.
I am part Betazoid too.
Riker, of course, gets some crumbs when he has to pick up as a Federation negotiator, and we have a nice scene where he and Ral try to psych each other out over a drink.
Deanna is just the woman to bring some meaning to your sorry existence.
The Ferengi are now entrenched as comically useless, but nicely comically useless. Two Ferengi characters here who would end up being trapped in the Delta Quadrant would actually show up years later in a Voyager episode. Kevin Peter Hall, who played the super tall alien, was also in the alien suit in the first two Predator movies, and he was a lead in the short-lived 80s series Misfits of Science. And this is pure speculation, but did this scene really require 400 takes with 6 cameras over 7 days to get adequate coverage?
It's ridiculous and wonderful.
The vengeance factor is such a nothing episode.
It is a likely hypothesis.
Some rebels who are basically space bikers are being killed off during peace talks between their leader and Coach Ballbricker. The third season has a slew of stories about rebels or a rebel trying to integrate into a society that doesn't get them, and this is by far the least interesting of those stories. It's not actively bad in the way of like dropping your phone in the swimming pool, or just disappointing like dropping your last cookie in the swimming pool.
And I am curious why.
Riker, meanwhile, who hasn't been getting much lately, gets some from cook Yuta, who unfortunately turns out to be an assassin. I mean, it's a thing you have to weigh up. Bringing a murderous assassin to justice versus quality Riker time. I mean, you can try and do both, but man, the paperwork afterwards.
So the Federation sensors that monitor the neutral zone just missed it.
It would seem so.
The Defector is a nice semi-follow-up to The Enemy, where a Romulan defector has information to stop a war. James Sloyan and his distinctive voice pops up in the first of several roles that he'd play in Star Trek. At first, the Romulan says he's a logistics officer who wants to prevent war, but he also will not betray his people. Then it turns out he's actually an admiral set up by his superiors to poke the Federation. Data sees the admiral as somebody to study. He does that quite a bit this season, cozying up to the guest characters to size them up and to try and learn about them. The hardest job in the Romulan Empire would have to be Romulan resources, since on Romulus they would need to be extra devious just to get through the day, like listening to your health concerns while at the same time plotting to denounce you for taking too many sick days.
Irrelevant! Irrelevant!
Romulan authors of whodunits must also have a tough time with plotting, since it really doesn't matter who the killer is because they'll just randomly appoint a killer wearing a Starfleet uniform. The Romulans have always had their thing where they were just too tricky to deal with, which was a nice contrast with the Klingons and the Ferengi. The Romulans were always 2 steps ahead of everyone else, which I suppose is fine for spies, less good for dance instructors.
This guy's incredible.
The Hunted is a story about a super soldier escaping from the gilded cage that he's been imprisoned in. Dana is so finely designed for survival that he has no detectable life signs, he can break out of transporters, and he can kill almost with a look. Troy takes an interest in the case, as does Data, since again, Data sees somebody he can learn from. Data is great at some things, but I really do not want to have a job interview with him where he just picks holes in my employment history, asks difficult questions about why I left my last job, and whether they ever discovered how the fire in the stationery cupboard was started.
Have you tried, sir?
We studied it thoroughly.
The Hunted is a solid story with a good guest cast, but sticking a mustache on the brilliant James Cromwell isn't fooling anybody. He's like 9 foot tall and always seems to have a bump on his forehead. Cromwell would appear in other Trek series and as Zefram Cochrane in Star Trek First Contact.
This is a war for independence, and I am no different than your own George Washington.
We get to the high ground and wait, didn't we just do this one? By now this story just feels a bit familiar. Here we have a society with rebels and a really simplistic takes on the ethics of both terrorists and the people fighting them.
I take my killing very seriously, Doctor.
Beverly is kidnapped by a group who have use of a super duper transporter that will actually kill you. See, McCoy was right all along. The terrorist leader tries to charm Beverly and then kidnaps Picard, and then, well, there's no satisfactory answer in a 44-minute program in a long-running series that's never going to mention this planet ever again. It's a little heavy-handed, like Paul Bunyan giving you a pat on the back.
Is that what you want?
In Deja Q, Q returns, this time naked as the day he streaked across Wembley Stadium. He's been stripped of his powers and made mortal, so he chooses to be human, hoping the Enterprise will take him in.
What's the right thing to say? Ow? Ow.
A bored, formerly omnipotent being doesn't really do teamwork all that well, and so he finds adjusting to life on the Enterprise difficult, like when your workplace hires a retired football star as a sales consultant selling paper cups. A planet is in jeopardy from a displaced moon, and Q is assigned to help Geordi while Data is Q's handler. Data in particular is trying to work out logically whether Q really is now mortal, while Guinan just cuts through all the bullshit with a much simpler test.
Seems human enough to me.
Some creatures that were previously taunted by Q have come for revenge, just as the ship is attempting to divert an astral body from crashing into a planet.
But if it means anything to you, you're a better human than I.
Q leaves the ship so that the aliens will leave Enterprise alone, which means he has performed a selfless act. And the Q, not that Q, the other Q, will actually have to let him back in. Q, I mean this one, not that one. This Q was LA Law star Corbin Burnson popping up in Star Trek for some odd reason. So it's sort of a comedy episode, but it's also about the human condition. Put all that together, add John Delancey, and it works a treat. I think A Matter of Perspective is, for me at the very least, the worst episode of this season.
Haphazard melange of clashing styles.
Riker is accused of murder and Picard holds an extradition hearing on the holodeck, which conveniently exonerates Riker. Now, I'm not saying Riker did murder somebody. It's just that justice by AI extrapolation is just a little bit convenient.
I withdraw my request for Commander Riker's extradition.
Like having toilet paper delivered directly to your bum by Uncle Reg's failed startup Uber Wipes. The episode is a riff on Rashomon, Akira Kurosawa's 1950 film about different perspectives on the same event, which would feature the same story told from various points of view. You only have the whole story when you've watched the whole thing. In Matter of Perspective, you only get the whole story if you manage to stay awake. The results are, by design, slightly repetitive, or at least the way it's used here is repetitive, and not particularly interesting. Where it's lacking in nuance, just as using a sledgehammer to open a window to get some fresh air is one way to fast-track a permanent ban from Airbnb.
Dr. Apgar killed himself during his attempt to kill Commander Riker.
So, Patrick Stewart had been the star from day one, but he felt sidelined by having the first officer lead all the away missions. So he made it clear that he wanted Picard to do more. That has the effect of Riker becoming the equivalent of all those screws you have left over after assembling a bookcase.
You're a dead man, Apgar. A dead man.
Mark Margolis would, much later on, become well known to fans of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul.
And we have nothing further to say to each other.
So remember when we said the season was a decent improvement on the first 2 years, that it was mainly achieved through decent to very good episodes? Well, now comes the time for a barnstormer. Yesterday's Enterprise. I mean, what can I say about yesterday's Enterprise other than supercalifragilistic f*** me, this is godocious?
It's an earth drink. Prune juice.
Warrior's drink.
The Enterprise encounters an anomaly in space, and all of a sudden, we're on a different Enterprise, a more aggressive Enterprise where Starfleet has been at war with the Klingons for almost as long as you spent on hold the last time you tried to call your insurance company. Worf is gone, but Tasha Yar is alive and back at her post. Well, not back at her post, because in this new timeline, she never went away. The Enterprise did not need to enter the anomaly, but another Starfleet vessel had emerged from it, and it's the Enterprise NCC 1701C, which had been thought lost for 22 years after defending a Klingon outpost against a Romulan attack. Now, this is both good and bad, since Starfleet could use another ship, but now questions will be asked by the insurance company that wrote it off 22 years ago. This time, you can be sure that they will call you back.
No.
And through all of this, Guinan has the feeling that everything's wrong.
It's changed.
She doesn't have details, just feelings, and things are especially weird whenever she sees Tasha. So Picard is going to send the crew of the Enterprise C back to face the Romulans in the past to what is almost certain doom, on the off chance that their horrific deaths in space may possibly prevent the war from ever starting. Now, that's a tough call. Even worse, the evidence is a bartender's gut feeling.
You have only your trust in me to help you decide to do it.
Tasha, who's formed a rapport with Lieutenant Castillo, decides to tag along with the Enterprise C, since she doesn't want the meaningless death that a bartender has mentioned without context or details. Look, in story terms, it makes for a far better end to Tasha than she'd originally had, at least until, well, things happen later on. Yesterday's Enterprise is the best episode focusing on Denise Crosby, or more accurately, the best episode focusing on Crosby as Tasha Yar. It's also one of the best uses of Whoopi Goldberg as Guinan. Denise Crosby, who by now had perhaps felt that leaving the show was not the greatest career move, would also say that Yar had to die for her to finally get a good episode. Damn straight, Denise Crosby.
Yeah.
Trisha O'Neill and Christopher McDonald guest star, though history does not record whether Lieutenant Castillo came from Miami or whether he played golf. Yesterday's Enterprise was a triumph of acting, of production, and it's also one of the first times on Next Generation we could call the writing an unequivocal triumph. It should not have worked anywhere near as well as it did. Look at the writing credits and you'll see more writers beavering away here than at an LA Starbucks. The show's script coordinator kicked it off, other writers chipped in, but it was needed for production, like last week.
Where am I supposed to be?
Dead.
Often scripts put together at lightning pace don't always come off as well as you'd like, but here the tribulations weren't a hindrance. The script's last-minute nature meant each act was written by different writers, and to avoid a production shutdown, the staff had to reluctantly work over the Thanksgiving weekend. Then producer Ira Stephen Bear told his angry scribes, that everybody dies in it, which apparently really G'd up the writers writing on their long weekend. In the end, only a few of the main characters are actually killed on screen, and then the timeline is restored. So only Tasha really died. Or did she?
Jordy, tell me about Tasha Yar.
Yesterday's Enterprise finally gave the Next Generation something to compete with the likes of the original series classic City on the Edge of Forever. It's just a brilliant episode.
Loud!
What are your intentions toward my daughter?
In The Offspring, Data makes a daughter, Lal. At first it's cute, but Picard has some concerns, which he then has to put aside when a Starfleet admiral who also has concerns wants to forcibly take Lal for study without Data to supervise. It's a small episode with small stakes, but it works really well thanks to Brent Spiner and guest star Hallie Todd, who'd later be Lizzie McGuire's mother.
He's biting that female!
Star Trek The Next Generation wasn't shy about giving our cast kids for a day.
I love you, Father.
And then just taking them away. So, spoilers for the rest of the series. Troy had a kid and lost it, Data had a kid and loses it, Riker's given an imaginary son, Picard is given a family who will be dead by the end of the episode, Worf has a kid and he sends it away, Beverly's son Wesley Crusher will eventually travel in another dimension to avoid having to buy her a Mother's Day gift. Only Geordi seems to have stayed away from the imaginary baby mamas, though truth be told, he may have one stashed on holodeck somewhere.
Lal is progressing very slowly, but is not deterred by early setbacks.
It's also Jonathan Frakes' first show as a director. Frakes had expressed to executive producer Rick Berman a desire to direct an episode.
Have you any idea what will happen when Starfleet learns about this?
Berman said, sure, but first you'll have to go to director school. Upon finding no such place in the Yellow Pages, Frakes instead sat in with directors and editors and studied every aspect of production. After the actor had stuck at it, Berman, who thought he was just fobbing off Frakes with pointless busy work, was impressed enough to offer Frakes a simple directing assignment. The Offspring is a Data episode without any major special effects or any link to the late 90s band because nobody in history could have made that link in 1990. Frakes' success here saw other cast and crew lobby Berman for a chance at directing, sometimes successfully, and at other times less so.
Why are they leaving?
Sins of the Father is kinda weird to look back on since it's really only the third episode to spotlight Worf in a major way.
I am Klingon!
And it's still at a time when a Worf episode meant other Klingons were involved, but Sins of the Father marks the point where the show really decided to delve into Klingon culture and history in a way that seemed less made up on the spot. I mean, it was made up on the spot, but many things about the Klingons established here would stick with the show for many years. For example, had this episode had two factions of Klingon ice cream fans in a turf war, then every subsequent Klingon story would have involved speeches regarding honour and ice cream. It's just that influential. As a newly minted staff writer, Ronald D. Moore was given the job of taking two story submissions and melding them into one, which would eventually make him the de facto Klingon guy on the writing staff. But, alas, he never wrote stories about Klingons and their love of sorbets, gelato, snow cones, frozen yogurt, soft serve, or dare I say it, semi-Freddo.
You are still fat.
Following on from Riker's brief tour on a Klingon vessel the previous year, the Klingon commander Kern takes Riker's place for a bit, and of course our regulars aren't happy with his new iron fist clad in a spiky iron glove. Except Worf, but then he feels he's being dishonoured by his new senior officer.
Very good, Lieutenant. You handled that well.
It turns out Kern, despite being Worf's superior officer, is also Worf's younger brother. So while Worf has to do what Kern says on the Enterprise, it's Worf who gets to sit in the front seat of their parents' car. Or would have had they not been killed at the Kittima massacre years earlier. Worf and Kern's father, Moog, designer of the Mini-Moog, had been accused by Duras of betraying the Klingon Empire by transmitting information to the Romulans which made the attack possible. For the first time, we visit the Klingon homeworld. And for this first visit with a TV budget, it's a little claustrophobic.
It is a good day to die, Duras. And the day is not yet over.
Worf wants to defend his family's honour. Kern is attacked, Picard takes his place as Worf's second.
Then I would ask you to stand with me.
See how it's Picard and not somebody like Data or Riker. Patrick Stewart laid down the laws and it paid dividends. Picard finds evidence that it was Duras' father, not Worf's, who was the traitor, but since the House of Duras was more powerful, and in order to save the Empire and Kern's life, Worf offers to accept discommendation, which is a form of dishonourable discharge from being a Klingon. Look, memories come flooding back. I remember the time I was fired from McDonald's after Jimmy Mabel accused me of reselling the toys that he stole out of the Happy Meal boxes. Sins of the Father is a great episode. It's a fantastic showcase for Michael Dorn, and it's also Candyman actor Tony Todd's first appearance as Kern, a role that he would play through the end of Deep Space Nine. Charles Cooper would play Kempek twice on the series and played Cord in Star Trek V The Final Frontier. In Allegiance, Picard is kidnapped and finds himself in a cell with 3 other aliens. A Bolian in Starfleet, an alien from the planet Dormat, and an angry Klingon but not Klingon, Esok. A Bolian cadet, a Myzarian coward, and Esok walk into a bar. It sort of just sounds like the first line of a joke told at Starfleet Academy. The second line of the joke involves tachyons or tetrions or some shit and doesn't always translate that well.
Why should we believe you?
The thing is, Picard is also on the Enterprise, though he's acting strangely, where he flirts with Beverly and has fun by leading drinking songs in 10 Forward. Apparently, Picard in a good mood is the thing that raises the hackles of Riker and company, for if the captain is having a good time, then something is clearly wrong. The Picard they know is, truth be told, a bit of a buzzkill. Meanwhile, Picard, that is the real Picard or OG Picard or Picard Prime, leads the others in an escape room that is even more poorly designed than an actual escape room. Some aliens are kidnapping other aliens in order to observe them using the old science excuse for acting like exceptionally poor party hosts. It's okay, it's a reasonably solid episode.
Would you care to dance?
I thought you didn't dance.
In Captain's Holiday, Captain Picard takes a vacay, and so he goes to Risa, where he wants to avoid sex and read, which does sound like the plot to a really unsuccessful 1980s teen comedy, Gettin' None. Picard meets Vash, a woman who's interested in archaeology, which is something that seems to pique Picard's interest. There's also a Ferengi who wants some artifact, and some aliens pop up from the future.
Let's get some sleep.
It's a fun little romp for Patrick Stewart, who finally got his wishes when he told writers that he wanted Picard to fight and to fuck. Well, it's Star Trek, so he does both in the episode, but it's Star Trek, he doesn't do both at the same time. But man, those deleted scenes, whew, I need some water. Picard, you old dog. Also, Patrick Stewart, I read your book, you old dog. The genesis of the episode became a political hot potato behind the scenes with Gene Roddenberry taking an interest, where he wanted to see Risa as the ultimate horny planet with orgies of all types going on 24/7. And Patrick Stewart became involved before the episode was even written to avoid any idea that Picard was feeling old and clapped out. While the episode changed drastically, it did the job of getting Picard laid.
You, of course, have a nobler purpose in mind.
He seemed to need it. The Ferengi here was Max Grodenchik, who'd later play Rom in Deep Space Nine. It's at this point we should acknowledge that by now Patrick Stewart was fast becoming the only cast member who could pull off this look. The look of tinfoil swimming trunks designed with the idea of showcasing, but also containing, Yorkshire's finest tea bags.
So it would seem.
It's not purely aesthetic, also highly practical, acting as a Faraday cage for the captain's junk. In Tin Man, an alien something is the subject of a race against time between the Romulans and the Federation. Tam Elbrin is assigned to make contact with the creature nicknamed Tin Man, but later on we'll learn it goes by Gomtu.
He was a colleague of yours.
He was a patient.
Tam is a powerful betazoid telepath, but he's so powerful that he can't block out people's thoughts. Tam will answer your questions before you've finished asking, and not because he's memorized the whole script before the rest of the cast. He just knows. So for him, hanging out with Data is a breath of fresh air. The Romulans try to insist upon their claims to Gomtu, but they never asked Gomtu what it wanted. Here is a rare example of an episode that was a spec script that was bought and put into production immediately, as it was considered ready to go almost from the get-go. Harry Groner was known to fans of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and would appear a few times in various Trek series.
It excites me.
I think we're about ready for some Reg Barclay time. Usually we see people serving on the Enterprise as people who really do belong on the Enterprise. They're at the top of their field. For once we see somebody who is struggling. Lieutenant Barclay finds it hard to connect with his peers, and his boss is a hard ass, constantly riding his back. The tyrant, Geordie LaForge. His colleagues have nicknamed him Broccoli behind his back, and he just finds it hard to deal.
Get out of my life.
Reg retreats into the holodeck, where he has recreated the senior staff, giving their avatars roles where he can finally get the final word.
I guess the question is whether Mr. Barclay is Enterprise material.
Picard makes Geordie work with Barclay, which is not remotely patronising, you understand, where Geordie has to get Barclay to try and fit in. Dwight Schultz was still known to many as Howling Mad Murdoch on the A-Team, and here he gives us a character who's not insane, but just hates making eye contact, which I suppose does make Geordie his ideal boss. Of course, things take a turn when his avatars of the bridge crew are discovered. The Riker stink-eye level in this episode tops out at around 8.3. It's a show where some people like it and others don't, which couldn't possibly have anything to do with the idea that Barclay is an affectionate ribbing of the most obsessive type of Star Trek fan.
I look forward to your report, Mr. Broccoli.
Barclay's recreation of the bridge crew without their consent does ruffle a few feathers.
It's not without its element of humor.
I am the goddess of empathy.
Though not Geordie, perhaps because he's got form in this area.
I mean, I am the guy who writes down things to remember to say when there's a party.
Also, I'm just asking, why is Guinan dressed like a goldfish?
The idea of fitting in just repels me.
The Most Toys sees Data kidnapped by collector Kivas Fajo, and a war of wills breaks out over Data's refusal to wear a costume or sit in a chair. Saul Rubinek gives us an odious character in one of the best guest star turns of the season, possibly of the series. Fajo is a rich brat who thinks he can get away with anything, but finds out that, at least in fiction, justice sometimes has a way of catching up with rich supervillains.
So it seems.
Brent Spiner. Well, we can't sing his praises enough, and this season has been a revelation. In seasons 1 and 2, Data episodes, outside of maybe Data Law and Measure of a Man, were often cute episodes, not always all that great, and they didn't really showcase Brent Spiner's talent.
You may expect me to use every means at my disposal to resist your wishes.
For somebody who's emotionless, Data still manages to convey so much. Does Data try to kill Fajo at the end?
It seems to have discharged, sir.
Discharged.
Well, yeah, most likely. It's a pity we never saw more of Fajo as a character, as he could have been a really interesting recurring foe, like a modern Harry Mudd. The episode does have a tragic tinge behind the scenes, as Fajo was originally meant to be played by David Rappaport, who had attempted to take his own life during filming. The role was recast with Saul Rubinek at short notice, and he would turn in a masterful performance.
Say hello. No need to be shy.
The whole idea of a super collector collecting sentient beings is an old sci-fi trope, but the Most Toys feels like what you get if you mixed a collector giving a tour of his massive action figure collection and Toy Story. Ambassador Sarek embarks on his last diplomatic mission, but he's got a degenerative disease that affects his ability to keep his emotions in check, which leads him to broadcasting negative vibes to the crew, who suddenly start acting like people sharing a long cab ride with the same waiter who had thrown up on them after serving them dinner.
Sarek may unintentionally be projecting intense emotions onto other people.
Fistfights break out, and I was just waiting for people to start dueling with swords. Mark Leonard returns as an aged Sarek, dignified but full of emotions that are let loose.
I'm not affected by emotional considerations. I think you are affected, sir.
Spock's human mother Amanda had been played by Jane Wyatt, but with this show set so far in the future, Sarek needed a new wife, Perrin. So he's got a type, I'll give him that. There's a school of thought that Sarek's mental state was a sly reference to Gene Roddenberry's own failing health, where his mind was having good days and bad days. As a way for Star Trek to address conditions such as dementia in a Star Trek-y way, Sarek is a pretty good episode, nailed by the performances of Leonard and Stewart. Sarek was also an episode that quietly broke the unwritten law, don't mention the original series, which, sounds very weird to say about a sequel series called Star Trek The Next Generation. Sarek ends with Picard undergoing a mind meld so the ambassador can complete his negotiations, while Picard has to deal with Sarek's powerful emotions. Of course, there's absolutely no reason why it had to be Picard here, other than Patrick Stewart was the star of the series, and coincidentally he was also by far the actor with the biggest range.
Isn't that right, Captain?
No offence at all to the rest of the cast, but did you really want to see Riker acting out Sarek's emotions? I didn't, but now having said that, I actually do, so, make it so. As for the one mention of Spock, now that was a big deal for the producers to even contemplate the idea of popping a Spock on it.
There was a moment when I actually thought the two of them were going to hit each other.
Menage a Troi is a comedy episode where Luoxana was lusted after by Ferengi Damon Tog, and after he's rebuffed, Cog just kidnaps Luoxana along with Deanna and Riker from their picnic on Beta Z.
I have a business proposition for you.
Thanks, but I'm not interested in any of your propositions.
It's not a classic, but it has its moments, such as when Majel Barrett tries to lull her captor into a false sense of umox. And then, to the surprise of absolutely no one, Patrick Stewart comes in and then steals the show at the end.
Longing still for that which longer nurseth the disease.
Ethan Phillips appears as one of the Ferengi. He'd been a regular on the sitcom Benson and would later play Neelix for 7 seasons on Star Trek Voyager. Wesley gets a promotion from acting ensign to full ensign. Though since the show had pretty much abandoned the idea of Wesley being a major character anymore, in practice his new rank was now non-acting ensign.
Wait, repeat that one. Put it on continuous replay. You. Hear that popping noise?
This episode has one of the few looks at the planet Beta Z, where of course it's a serene paradise.
My, what big ears you have.
Betazoids can't read the mind of Ferengis, so they cancel each other out as bridge partners. Betazoids are inveterate cheats at games like Guess Who, while Ferengi can't be trusted at Monopoly. Betazoids make good customer service since not processing a customer's request for a refund will make them physically ill, while a Ferengi warranty is not worth the soggy faded thermal paper it's printed on. It's also at this point that you may realise that while no other actors followed Marina Sirtis' original lead and portrayed Betazoids with a vague accent, most actors playing Betazoids did in fact wear the dark contact lenses. I'm wearing dark contact lenses right now, only because my TV set's high dynamic range function is set to blinding and I can't find the setting to change it.
Seems like there's a little more to it than that.
Transfigurations was a small episode to balance the budget for the end of the season. An alien nicknamed John Doe is rescued by the Enterprise and Beverly nurses him back to health, though his memory has yet to return.
Your brain will regulate both systems. That should stabilize him long enough to get him up to the ship.
It's Star Trek, so something happened, and John transferred some energy to Geordi that's given him some newfound confidence.
See you tonight in 10 forward?
Yeah, I'll be there.
John has the ability to defend himself, and also to heal major injuries. As it transpires, John is wanted by his own people since he's been changing into a more evolved life form, but one in a terrible full-body leotard, which does look like what happened to my Spider-Man costume after the incident with the bleach. Transfigurations was a story meant to showcase Beverly's competence, unlike most of her appearances in the first season, which showcased why her malpractice insurance premiums have increased so much.
I never thought he'd make it this far.
Beverly and John have a sort of relationship that's not quite a romance, but there's certainly a coffee date or two in 10 forward. It's a sweet episode with how John Doe touches the lives of the crew, but really it's the local support act for the biggest band in the world. It's the candy bar you scoff in the cab on the way to a banquet, so time to loosen your belt for the season finale.
Less talk, more synthahol.
It's time for the best of both worlds, or as we now know it, Best of Both Worlds Part 1. We met the Borg in Q Who in Season 2. Prior to that, we'd heard about outposts along the neutral zone being scooped up by some unknown beings. Now we put them together and realised that the Borg are actually much closer than was previously thought. Picard has assigned the ambitious Borg specialist Lieutenant Commander Shelby to work with the crew on investigating the Borg threat, where she will butt heads with Riker.
May I speak frankly, sir?
By all means.
You're in my way.
He, meanwhile, has been offered his own ship, the USS Melbourne, and Shelby is gunning for his job on the Enterprise. They meet the Borg and come off second best, and the worst is yet to come. Picard is captured and turned into a Borg PR mouthpiece in their coming assimilation of the Federation. Locutus of Borg is apparently going to make humanity not shit their pants at the thought of being taken over by the Borg.
Resistance is futile.
Look, I don't know if that strategy will work, but anything's possible.
Fire.
Cliffhanger! New head writer Michael Piller had managed to get the writing side of the Next Gen under control this season, but he wasn't sure whether he was going to come back for another year. When writing this episode, he had no idea how the story would resolve, and there'd be a very strong chance that he'd not have to be the one to worry about it. So he went all in, using Riker's career dilemma to mirror his own. This is the tipping point where The Next Generation went from being a syndicated sequel to Star Trek to becoming the headline act of Star Trek.
We have engaged the Borg.
While the third season had been a massive improvement on the first two seasons, the Best of Both Worlds was the show that brought back lapsed fans and really started Next Generation's transformation into a great series in its own right. People had permission to watch Star Trek because it was now good, but it ended on a cliffhanger. So how would it end? Would Riker have to kill Picard? Would Beverly have to kill Picard? Would Worf have to kill Picard? Would Data have to... Yeah, you get the idea. A few months later, the story would resume when the 4th season of Star Trek The Next Generation began broadcast in September of 1990. But again, that's a video for another day.
I need more.
There is no more.
If you enjoyed this review, please like and subscribe, leave a comment below, or check out some of our other videos.
Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Let me not
You didn't tell me that you and Captain Picard were...